But for those who don't, if you'd like to just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here tonight.
Sure. Look, I guess my story starts in 2015, in February 2015, when I had been told by a fellow neighbour that they were about to initiate a scheme amendment at the town of Cambridge. I'd never been to a council meeting, but I said, okay, I'll get a babysitter and I'll come along. I don't know very much about planning, but I know about governance. So I'm a lawyer. I used to be a litigator, about 10 years of litigation, and then I've been working in companies and doing sort of corporate company secretarial stuff, sort of work. So I go along to the meeting. It was quite horrified at the way the meeting went. Saw people being kicked out of the meeting, and the mayor telling people that they had financial interest and they couldn't be in the meeting, but of course he didn't have a financial interest, even though he lived in City Beach and the people he kicked out lived in City Beach. Didn't quite make a lot of sense. So we sort of sat down at a kitchen table after the meeting and tried to debrief it, and we realised that people who'd come along to the meeting and asked questions were actually Dorothy Dix's, and they all knew the mayor. So he had sort of said, oh, who are you? And it turned out he'd been on boards with the people for 8 years. So we realised it was really quite corrupt in that sort of sense, corrupted process. So we then set about trying to organise and tell the community about this particular scheme amendment that had been initiated. We organised a rally in a park, and when I filled in the form, I said, I don't know how many people are going to come, maybe 80, and we got 1,200. Wow. And from that, we really galvanised our community. Sean Lestrange, our local member, had sort of been quite neutral about the issue until he came along and saw 1,200 of his constituents, and he then really moved behind the issue and was supportive of us. I guess there's a slight difference in what we were doing. The scheme amendment had already been initiated in relation to it was really the subdivision of City Beach and Floriat, to sort of have duplex and triplex homes on the blocks. And we were slightly different in the sense that we offered a plan B. We'd worked out what we thought how we could put density into City Beach and across the town of Cambridge. And we went to the mayor and said to him, look, we think this is a better plan. This will get you still get the same number of dwellings, so you'll be able to make your local planning strategy targets, all your dwelling targets. He did not want to do that. I think. And we didn't really understand why, because we'd offered him this particular plan B. Then we started suing him in the Supreme Court in relation to the misleading brochure that he'd given out to the community, because the community didn't understand when they particularly had public consultation that, in fact, he was trying to slice up all of the suburbs. So then fast forward from that, we were still in the Supreme Court when we said, look, even if he wins, even if we win in the Supreme Court, he'll just do it again. So we sat around another kitchen table and people said, well, someone needs to run for mayor, and we kind of went, well, who's going to do that? And everyone else
looked at you.
Yeah, it was like everyone else took a step back, and then I was running for mayor. Yeah.
So tell me, congratulations on being mayor, by the way. So tell me what happened on, it was April 2018, local government inquiry, and then on the 6th of November 2009, the DG offered to withdraw some inquiry, and then on the 26th of May, so you got a show for cause notice. So take us through all of that. We don't know
so
anything.
So there's a little bit more that happened. So basically, with our scheme amendment, which was called Amendment 31, we had the whole community. They had all these garden stakes out in their front yards. We then turned the garden stakes into vote for me as mayor and some other people on a ticket. The CEO at the time then went out and basically threatened to fine people for having the garden stakes in their front yard. They had rangers turn up to people's front doors and insist that they take them out the street. So it was a real community campaign, and people had to have a lot of tenacity to really get behind it. We barreled through, won the election, and then had to try and disassemble the scheme amendment, which was already on its way. It was about to be confirmed by the minister, so we managed to get rid of that after a lot of lobbying, lots of legal advice, and yeah, it was quite a lot of work. So we managed to get rid of that by the September of 2015. Wow. And then we've basically gone about well, certainly when I became the mayor, what I did was I got hold of the Local Government Act, and I rang up the councillor, the governance manager, and I said, look, can you get me a copy of the Local Government Act? He said, what are you going to do with it? And I said, well, I'm going to read it. And he said, oh, no one's ever asked for it before. So that was a bit of a confronting moment, but I was still in panic mode because I didn't particularly know what to do. And I just started going through the Local Government Act, and I just started applying my knowledge of how things should be done. I've also got an accounting degree with a finance major, so I was kind of going around going, well, that's not right, and that's not right, and sort of just spotting things and asking for advice. I still was in a minority on council, and then in October 2017, the numbers changed on our council. Some other people got on council, and the people that got on council, one was a property lawyer, the other was a planner, and they said there's something wrong with the setbacks in City Beach and Floriat. They're building too far forward. And I basically had raised this issue before, but had not got the right answer from the CEO. He said to me, it's fine, don't worry, it's all very legal. And I said, because they seem to be getting further forward. Couldn't quite work it out. So we asked for some independent legal advice. The CEO gave us some advice, but it was from a firm of choice for the CEO. We then decided to get our own independent legal advice, and out of that we started an investigation into the setbacks. We found there were 880 homes built in the wrong place. And from there we have gone about reasserting our front setbacks. We've also then done a huge governance review and found 46 governance failures. So just to echo some of the sentiments of Julie, I mean, really what's happening, I think, certainly from my understanding, is that within councils, there's just not... a lot of councillors don't question, and when you do question, you get targeted. And that's what I have done. I have asked lots of questions, and I've asked for developer contact registers, which I think is appropriate. So I got a motion up at council, and I've been criticised for moving lots of motions on notice. But that's actually how the Act says I'm supposed to, as an elected member, put things on the agenda, and that's what I have done. So I've just followed the Act. But so just to come around to your question, so when we actually got the legal advice in relation to that particular investigation for the setbacks, the advice from the CEO's law firm was, well, who's going to ask for the legal advice from the lawyers? And he said, they said it's a breach of Regulation 9, and we read Regulation 9 again, and it said that an elected member cannot do the work of the administration, and then there was a comma, and it said unless authorised by council. And so that was what we did. Yeah. We used that in that way, and that's why the Minister is now amending the Act.
It's it's so interesting, and round of applause, please. So I'm just going to make a comment, and then I've got one more question. It's so interesting that because so much of what you've said is what I've witnessed also with our council, and when you have a can-do attitude, you can see there's actually a lot more that can be done than you first might think. And that example you've just given, all you need is to have councillors that are diligent, hardworking, caring, and want to, get on with the job. And so congratulations on what you've done. Did you? So you basically then went to the Supreme Court. So you were quite heavily targeted, were you? And
Yes.
Also talk about, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
a little bit about how it affected you, as naturally it would personally, because it's a big thing to take on this role.
Yep.
And to go through that, if you don't mind sharing some
Sure.
of that.
So after we did the investigation into the front setbacks and we realised there was quite significant problems, we also realised that we had big problems with our statutory delegations. Now, I'd never heard of statutory delegations before I got into council, but it basically gives the legal power to the town's rangers or each of their staff that are basically exercising a statutory role. And we didn't have any in place. So when we realised that, our CEO tried to smudge it. Oh, that's being kind. So after we we sort of dealt with that and we put the right statutory delegations in place, eventually we basically suspended the CEO and we summarily dismissed him on about 23 grounds. We didn't pay him any money. Now,
I must say that is I think a lot of people here are clapping because that's a bold move.
It was huge.
That is a bold. That is a big. Oh, we just did this. That is a huge move.
No, we didn't just do that. We all lost an awful lot of sleep, and I would get up in the middle of the night and be, texting on my phone, and someone else would be up as well. I would get a response back from another counsellor because I go, oh my God, I can't believe we're doing this.
I'd like to hear that whole story, but that's probably a big story. But
because we did that, because we upset the department and one of their CEOs, and we summarily dismissed him, the Insiders Club basically have just targeted my council. So we then were given an inquiry notice, and we had gone to the department and said, look, we don't have delegations in place, you need to help us. And instead of that, they basically went about investigating us. Me personally, they investigated relationships of all of the elected members on council and wanted to know how we'd all known each other before. And the truth is, we didn't. Yeah. We'd really just got together over a common issue and had common understanding of what governance looks like. So out of that, we had an investigation that went for 2.5 years. They offered to withdraw it, and then I'm not really sure why they just ramped it up. I have some suspicions. I mean, really at that time I was asking a lot of questions about the role of WALGA and the insurance scheme, which I think is really has got real issues. But we moved a number of motions at my council. We also moved a motion supporting the rate revaluation because we were saying you should be pushing down rates. We should be having an efficient local government. It's possible. When we haven't changed our rates, we've had 0 rate increases for 4 years in the town of Cambridge. For 4 years, because it's possible. The staff can do it, but they just choose not to if you don't drive that efficiency.
Well, I've got no more questions. Other than to say congratulate you for what you've done, is there anything else you'd like to say tonight?
Look, no. I mean, really, I guess all that I would say in terms of the Supreme Court proceedings were, the minister really. It was as far as I was concerned, it was a setup. We got called into Damas House. We were given a show cause notice. It was vague. You couldn't have answered it. And when I explained that to him at the meeting, because he said, what are you going to say, Mayor? And I said, well, I can't answer this. It's so vague. I said we then went down in the lift, and he had a press conference set up in order to grab the message and set the tone. And as we were walking away from it, I said to someone, this is going to be really depressing because they're going to get to set the media. They're going to get to set the message. So that was when we turned around and we walked back and we said to the cameras, do you want an interview? And we went in front of the cameras and we grabbed the message. And that's what you have to do. You have to fight. You have to grab the message. You have to say, we are okay with having density in the right place, but you can't stick it everywhere. And that was really what we did with Amendment 31. We said we want it on our centres, and all of our community in the town of Cambridge has chosen where to put it. Density can bring good things. It can bring a vibrancy to your shopping centres. It can do some good things, but you just don't want it in your small streets. And I think if you look reasonable and you grab that message, good luck. I'm sorry, it's a big journey.